Welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast with Don and Suzanne Manning. Parents, what if we could give you the power to transform your family into something absolutely amazing?
A family where everyone is healthy, gets along, loves Jesus, and has great purpose in life.
Hey, let us flip your thinking to unlock the power God has given you to create your own Crazy Cool family. Hello, welcome to the Crazy Cool Family Podcast. Don and Suze here with you. We are in our culture series.
Yes, and within our culture series, we're talking about encouraging extravagantly and correcting
Easy word for you
carefully.
To say.
And then within that, today we're going to talk about anger. And
so you might say, how in the world do you talk about anger while you're encouraging extravagantly? But really, it's about that correcting carefully.
Right.
And I would say, and tell me if you agree with this, Suzanne, I would say 98% of parents, 99% of parents struggle with anger.
Yes, because little children can be so annoying because they know how to push our buttons at a level that nobody, other than customer help people.
That's my hot button. So my family knows that the people, when they don't help me right, I don't like that. But let me ask you a question. So, that's a great example. I get mad at customer service people. Do we think that, are children the issue, or is anger are we just wired to be angry? And I think we get angry at other things too. But what you're saying is that kids have a way of pushing our buttons in ways.
I know as a mom, but as a dad, I don't really remember you getting angry with the kids. I don't remember.
Oh, I think that I was really irritated. I would, there's so much about anger that we think that anger is blowing up at somebody, that's really, the standard says the definition is you're blowing up at somebody. I think the standard's a lot lower, higher than that, however you want to look at it, because
broader,
giving a really negative look is anger. When you are, walking around all frustrated and annoyed, because your kid doesn't do something, or
a harsh tone,
snide comments. And sometimes we turn into joking and, derogatory, but it's all based in anger. It's all based in, we didn't get our way. We didn't get what we wanted. And so we're annoyed, irritated, frustrated, whatever it is. And sometimes it comes out in a loud outburst that we associate. Now that's really, really angry. But so often it's just disapproval. It's just, that I think there's a lot of different definitions of anger.
And so to go back to your question where you asked, are we angry at the kid, or is it our own issue? And to answer that, I would say it's our issue 100%. And you said it perfectly, because we didn't get our way. Yeah. We are throwing a fit just like a child does, because our child, if that's who we're showing it to, because the child didn't put their shoes on in time, or they didn't get in the car, or they made a mess, or they were mean to their sibling. The list goes on and on for reasons why we get angry with our kid. But the bottom line is we're not getting what we want.
Yeah, and the Bible talks about anger a lot, and it says things like refrain from anger and turn from wrath in Psalms 37:8. It says in Proverbs 29, an angry person stirs up conflict. Isn't that so true? An angry person stirs up conflict, and a hot-tempered person commits many sins. How often do we really do something well? We always talk about, Jesus was angry when he cleared the temple. Okay, how often have we been angry and good things came out of it? Now let's flip that for a minute, because one of the reasons we do anger is with our kids, especially, is because we think it works.
It does work initially.
It works in the short term.
Yeah.
And so it works to get them to comply. I think we said this on another podcast, but I remember you saying that when you had young children, that it felt like you had to yell to get them to obey. They wouldn't do anything unless you chose to yell. And so, and otherwise they just sat there and watched TV or didn't, but isn't that true?
Yeah, no, definitely. I would say that as a young mom, I walked in frustration, irritation, and annoyance a lot. Those are just fancy words for anger, but I found I was very angry. And honestly, I don't think it was until, they all grew up a little bit and they were much more independent, but I just remember even the boys having a conversation with me saying, Mom, I really hate it when you get mad. Like and I'm not even mad at them. Like if I'm just frustrated at whatever, the oven's not working. And that made me reflect and think about, okay, when I am angry, whether it is at them or whether it's in a situation, what that does is it actually causes conflict within them. It causes them pain. It causes them grief. And initially, as a young mom, I used that anger to motivate them to obey because they didn't want mom mad at them, but not realizing that I was withdrawing from them.
Well, so here's what I want to encourage you parents, that even though Suzanne and I spent probably the first decade of our married life and parenting life pretty angry, frustrated, annoyed,
intense.
Yes. Our kids still turned out good. And so there's always room but I'm going to get to what you said at the last point of that we use anger to get compliance, to get obedience or whatever. But the shift we got to make, and that's what the Bible wants. It's not Don and Suzanne telling you to make a shift. It's God wanting you to make a shift. That anger is a very expensive relationship withdrawal. Yeah. That over time, anger puts a wedge in relationships, and consistent anger, and really even the occasional blow-ups. I mean, if your kids know, oh gosh, Dad's going to get mad at this, and they always say that, but it's like, mad is one thing, or maybe disappointed is another thing. But really the blow up, and really what happens is that the kids start to distance from you because they don't want to handle, just like the boys said to Suzanne, I don't like it when you're angry. Well, that's an expression, that's a positive expression to try to solve the problem. Many times kids will just put up a wall. And they say, I can't handle that disapproval. I can't handle that anger, so I'm going to distance. And so that's where anger, it solves the short-term problem of getting them to comply, or getting somebody to, go get their shoes on, or whatever it is. But in the long term, it drips in a wedge in relationships. Yeah.
And so I feel like that was a really fancy way to say anger is damaging. And we have to realize that. We have to address that and acknowledge that when I get angry, it is damaging. And you mentioned Jesus turning over the tables. I've used that example so many times. I fully, completely believe that Jesus was not out of control once. He walked in the fruit of the Spirit. He had self-control. He knew exactly what he was doing. He didn't go in there just out of, I believe he planned. He walked in and he goes.
If you read the scripture on that, it says that I wish I had it before.
I just read it.
Well, no, but it says that he actually prepared his rope.
Yes.
That, so if you think about it like a rope of 3 strands, like he actually made his rope before he went in there and cleared the table. So he's not going, it wasn't just a reaction. He's like, hey, I'm fixing to take these boys out.
Yeah.
And there is a time as a parent when you need to be forceful. There is and I think we associate, forcefulness with anger, and anger is a totally different deal. It's this out of control. It's losing your emotional, being. It's I'm wronged. There's so much that's in anger.
Well, and so that as you're talking, I'm thinking, okay, at the core, if we respond or if we react in anger, it's because we didn't get our way. But if we react in firmness, Jesus didn't go in there thinking, oh, these temples are in here and I'm not getting my way. I told them not to have the temples in here, or the tables in the temple. No, it was the tables are not supposed to be here because this is my Father's house. This is a house of worship. And so there was righteousness that was being denied. And that's where he came in and said, we've got to get rid of this. And so if as parents, I believe that anger is a God-given emotion and it is for us. It's really good. Anger is what helps the mother lift the car off the baby that's, or the anger is the thing that
I want to see that one time. I just want to see the mom lifting the baby.
But anger is, it does fuel us. But what is at the core of our anger? That's what we have to think about when we're interacting with our children and anger comes up. If you can just think for a second, okay, what's at the bottom of this? Is this because I'm not getting my way? Or is this because something righteous or unrighteous is happening and it needs to be corrected.
And if you look at where Jesus got angry, he got angry at the pharisaical, rule-following, arrogant, and the money changers, the people who were being deceitful with the people. That's what was motivated. Whenever they brought children to Jesus, he never got mad at them.
Right.
He said, "Bring those to me." He wanted to bless
Let
them.
the little children come.
He never did so because I think Jesus knew that how to handle children, but he also knew that anger is super expensive. And here's why.
Yeah.
There's three things that really anger does. And this is what we're trying to do. And this was a big, big flip for me as a parent. When I realized, the impact of my anger and realized I had 4 girls at first, so I had 5 women in my house. The standard, I couldn't even breathe angry without them feeling like I had just, done something horrible.
Well, and let me just touch down on that for just a second, because anger is not just in our words. It's not just in outbursts. It is in our face. It's in our kids pick up on that. Did you know that our kids read our nonverbals more than they hear our words? Sometimes they can't even comprehend the communication that we're doing, but they read our nonverbals. And so Don said he couldn't even breathe. He couldn't have a frown on his face. He couldn't have his eyes in where they're burrowed down. He couldn't do any of that because the girls picked up on his disapproval. And know that when our kids feel our anger, we are rejecting them. We are not rejecting what they've done in their little souls. They feel rejection, that you're rejecting daddy, mommy don't love me, don't like me.
And so I had to flip because I saw the damage it was doing. And there's 3 things that we think that, there's maybe others, but 3 in particular. One of them is anger produces fear in our children. Children of angry parents hide from their parents. And then they tend to hide from life as well. So one of the things is physical and emotional fear, and physical and emotional hiding happens when we are angry. Another one is aggressiveness. Sometimes when, it's like they either have to run from it or fight it. Think about it in the extreme where the kid who has an abusive dad finally just stands up to the dad and says, "I'm going to fight you." And, he takes the baseball bat against the dad or whatever and fights the dad or wants to punch him or whatever. And they get into a fist fight. Well, that's the extreme of that. But that's what happens. Sometimes it will bring out aggressiveness because, one, they've learned that angry behavior from the parent. And also they feel like they have to respond in some way. Either they withdraw or they respond.
Yeah. And I would say that I feel like that the fear, withdrawal, and then the attacking, the aggressiveness, those are both things that are prominent. But the one that I think is the most prominent is tentativeness.
Tentativeness.
Tentativeness. Am I not saying? Yeah, that word right there. Yeah. Because kids of angry parents, they hesitate. They're so afraid to make a mistake. They're so worried that any action that they do is going to create this reaction from their parents, this angry monster going to come out of nowhere from what they've done. Then they hesitate. They don't really talk, and they're not who they are. My favorite thing in the world is to see a child being who they are. Yeah. Dancing around and happy and living their life. Even when they're throwing the biggest fit ever because they didn't get what they wanted, that's who they are. And the child that is fearful of the parent, they won't do that. They'll become almost like a half person, invisible.
Yeah. I coached a lot of baseball when my kids were young, and young meaning like 6 to 12, and there were certain parents that would that were all over their kids during ball games, and you would watch the kid, and it was so hard to get that kid to hit well because they would literally step out of the box and look at their dad to see, what approval. And it's like, and they were so hesitant at the plate versus, we would try, if the parent wasn't there, it was so much better because they would just get in there and swing the bat, and they would swing like they knew how to already swing. We taught them how to swing, but when the dad was there, and really had to have a couple of conversations with moms and dads, it wasn't just dads, to say, okay, when your kid goes up to the plate, you have to be quiet. Do you understand? I mean, if you want that kid to be on this team, then you need to be, because you're not helping him at all when you're up. We've been doing this a long time. We've seen it happen a long time, and you're not helping because you're creating tentativeness in their swing. Now, do you want to do that? No, I don't. Okay. And they kind of know, but they don't know. And then half of them would do it and half of them wouldn't. But it's crazy how we can't stop it. But that's an example of creating tentativeness, if that's that word. Sounds like we're going camping. We're creating tentativeness, and but it's a great lesson to learn that. And I had to stop it myself as a dad. I would, with the best intentions, keep trying to correct my kid's swing, coaching third base. And I learned that I was speaking differently to my kid, or coaching first base actually is where I was, but because they could see me from the right hand side, they could see me, and I found that I treated my kid different than the other kids. I would correct my kid. I would be firmer. I would be more angry with my tone was different, and I had to change it because it was damaging to my child.
Yeah, we could do a whole podcast on how to encourage your kid through sports versus
Maybe we will.
yell at them. But anger is definitely not, just a bottom line. Anger is not something you ever need to bring to the court or to the field or anything like that. Your kid's got enough pressure on themselves to play the game without having their parent overreacting. But talking about just even in the home again, just thinking about situations. What is it that brings up anger in you? What is it that your kids do that trigger that anger? I mean,
well, and I think for some parents that they tell us a lot, I don't know how to get them to obey without being angry. Or they feel like if you take away my anger button or my
response,
you're actually taking away my firmness. Yeah. That you can't be firm without being angry. And let me tell you, parents, that's a lie. That's a lie that you have to be angry when you're firm. In fact, if you learn it, and here's the first part of this whole podcast, we're trying to get you to believe that anger is detrimental. So now we got to give you ways to go about it and how to do it. Yeah. Well, when you can disassociate, there's another big word. When you can like tentativeness. So when
you said it right though.
When you can disassociate firmness with anger, then now, because think about it, if you are a calm, firm person, then you will ultimately, maybe not at first, it takes time to really have this take hold, but you will command respect in your home. And so when they know that Dad's serious about this, but he's not going to be angry about it, you command a respect in your home rather than, so many times, my dad tended to be angry and yell. And so my brother and I just kind of, that's Larry talk. We would say, when we were growing up, that Larry talk was he would just go off on us. And so as soon as he did, we would just kind of shut down and figure out how to avoid it until we could get back and he was okay again.
Yeah, and so that's just the opposite of my experience, because my dad was never angry at me. Now, I saw him be angry, when he would hit his thumb with a, hammer or whatever. I saw him be angry, but he was never angry at me. He was always firm. And so I always respected, I always wanted to do what was right, but never got punished, never got grounded, any of those things, because he just would say, Suzanne, that's not right. Suzanne, don't do that. That was it. It's all that needed to be said. Yeah. I never once heard him yell, ever.
And think about it, parents. Wouldn't that be so cool if you just walked into a room and said, this is what we're going to do. And not that you did it without listening or whatever, but that's a whole nother topic, but that because you commanded the respect, they obeyed.
Yeah. And so even with so many times, like you had said earlier, that parents say, well, I have to use anger to get my kids to obey. I just want to go ahead and let you know that you've trained them to do that. You've trained them to respond to anger. And so we too can train them to respond to firmness and not anger. For me, I had to use anger. I thought I had to use anger to get them to obey, because maybe I wasn't bossy enough, because I was too kind, because I could run all over me and I realized that was not valuable. I didn't want kids that could run all over me.
What do you say to the parent, though, that says, and we hear this, that, oh, but you don't know my kid. my kid is, just so full of energy, doesn't listen, whatever, has ADHD,
Yeah.
whatever. How do you respond to that parent that says, the only way I can get their attention is to raise my voice because of their behavior, because of their personality?
Right, right. And so I would say, and I've said this actually, you're underestimating the intelligence of your child. And to go in and go ahead and extend them that honor, that value, that respect by not raising your voice, by not being angry, choosing to be firm, by saying it, we are going to go to bed right now. It's time to go to bed. It is 9:00. It's time to go to bed. And you get their response and everything else like that. And then you say it again. It's 9:00. It's time to go to bed. It's your bedtime. Then you can follow up with calm, cool, collected, firm. You will have a consequence if you don't go to bed. If you're not in bed by 9:00, then your consequence will be that tomorrow night you go to bed at 8, or whatever the consequence is. And so there is a firmness, and I just want to encourage you to almost look at it as a challenge, maybe even as a game if you're competitive. How can you engage with your children using firmness instead of anger, not raising your voice and not getting yourself mad, because the reality is you want their obedience, and the best way to get their obedience is to partner with them. And you will not partner with them through anger. You're not going to connect with them with the anger. We've already said that. You disassociate, you disconnect with them, you disengage when you use anger, but you will connect with them when you use firmness.
Yeah, so scenario-wise, let's just think about some practical examples here. The siblings, your kids, they are the siblings, they're our kids, are fighting and are taking each other's things. Does that not make me mad? Absolutely it does. When our kids were little and they would fight, or they would, play over a toy. Even right now, it's the grandkids, and I'm just like, it feels like it, and they both start screaming, and it feels like a war zone.
And so just imagine a response. Like the mom goes in, she rips the toy away, she yells at one kid, to the big brother, "Don't take that from your little brother. Your little brother loves that toy. We bought that for him at the store." And little brother's over here crying, and you yell at the little brother, "Stop crying. Big brother's going to give it back to you. Here it is." And then you hand it to the little kid. Okay, so if you could imagine a big giant X and a buzzer, that's not how you do that situation. So same scene, two little kids, they're fighting over it. You walk in and you say, hand me that toy. I need to have that toy. And then you take the toy, very calmly and firmly say, "Because you've made this toy more important than your relationship, I'm going to put this toy up on the shelf. And when you guys have decided on how you're going to share it, then I'll give it back to you, because I want you to play with the toy. I think it's a great idea for you to have the toy."
I bought you the toy.
Yeah, this is little brother's favorite toy, and big brother, with little brother, but we're not going to make it more important. And so calm, cool, collected. The little kids are looking at you with big giant eyes like, "Wait a minute, who's this mommy?" Mommy usually rants and raves and joins us in our fit, so all three of us are throwing a fit, but now mommy's calm and cool. She must be serious.
Yeah. So, and I think there's another great point to put into that so often we bring more tension into the situation, that as a parent, we have more power.
Yeah.
Whether we believe it or not, we do. And
so we don't even need anger.
Well,
we don't, because we have influence.
And not only that, but when we got to realize that when we bring anger into a situation, if the kid's angry, it's one thing. It's somewhat like male and female. So like and whether we like it or not, it's true. If Suzanne gets upset, it's like, it bothers the boys, but it's like, that's what mom does sometimes. Mm-hmm. But if I get upset, there is more power in that. There's more power in, and some people will argue with that. We can argue it later, but that's what happens when you're the parent versus the child. When you move into that situation with your own anger, it's like double anger. It's like triple anger. Yes. And so you're bringing more, versus when you bring calmness into the situation. Remember, you're trying to diffuse the situation. And why is it we think we need to bring more anger into the situation, more chaos?
Because obviously anger was not working. For them even.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that so many times, or I know so many times that I've had to tell the parent, remember, you're the parent. You're the adult. Yeah. You're not the 4-year-old. So you don't get to act like the 4-year-old. You have to act like the adult. You need to bring the calm, cool, collected to the situation. And with that firmness, especially if there's disobedience, firmness needs to be in there. But firmness is going to take you so much further than anger.
Yeah. So what about a kid lying to you? Lying to your face. And you know he's lying. Well, how do we? I mean, we're just trying to think of things that really make us angry.
So for me, I laugh about that because I've told a parent this before. The people are thinking I'll never ask Suzanne a question again. But I've told the parent, "Are you angry? Are you angry with your child?" Because your child is going to lie to you out of self-preservation, because they would rather you not know the truth than get the reaction and the response of anger from you. They don't want you, because remember we said it earlier, when we are angry with our kids, they do not see that you're angry at what they're doing. They interpret as you're angry at them, their very being, and then that anger is then in their little minds turned to, my parents don't love me. They're rejecting me. My parents hate me. I mean, and you've heard that before. You hate me. Why do you hate me? And then you've even heard kids say, I hate you, because they're feeling that rejection at such a high level that the only way to know how to respond is to hate back. So I would say to the parent whose kid's lying to them, are you being angry? And if you are, what can you do about that?
Yeah. And the same thing happens like when a kid's screaming at you, or throwing a fit or whatever. You're like, I've done this before. I mean, I look at the child and I just go, you know what? I don't talk to you that way. And so you don't get to talk to me that way. Now, if I did talk to him that way, then I couldn't make that claim. But instead I was like, you know what? In our house and the way we do things, we don't talk to each other that way, and I don't get to talk to you that way. You don't get to talk to me that way. So if you're going to do that, then I've got to up the consequences until you stop doing that, because I'm the parent and I'm not going to allow you to do that. Now, I haven't said that in an angry way. Maybe I've said it in a firm way, and that I believe that. And plus, and here goes the next part of that. I mean, what we're going back to is I haven't done it. And so, and even so, flip that. And if I do it, if I get angry with my kids, I will go back to them and say, because I see the hurt and I see the way it damages, I say, you know what? I don't get to do that. I don't care what you do to me. I never get to speak. As the dad of this house, I never get to speak to you in that way. And so I'm sorry.
And I think that's so good. I'm so glad you brought that up, because I think as parents, we think that we have the right to get angry at our kids. And I would like to tell you, you do not. We do not. We actually do not have the right to get angry at, for sure, a gift that God has given us to train up in the way that we should go. But we actually don't have the right to get mad at angry.
I've given an example of this before, and it's a kind of an extreme example, but you guys really won't want to talk to us after. But like, just I said, think about if you were sitting, if you were, walking by a baseball field and you saw a dad with his son, and the dad is talking to his son about playing baseball or whatever. And all of a sudden the dad got angry and just punched the son in the nose. I mean, what would you do? You would run over there, and anybody would, and go, oh, and the kid, backed up. He's bleeding out of his nose, and he's hurting, and he's crying. And you would say, oh my goodness, arrest this guy because he has, he's hit his son in the nose. I mean, it's a horrible thing. And please, by this analogy, we're not advocating, we're saying it's a horrible, horrible thing. Yet, if you saw that same dad yelling at his kid, telling him he was a terrible kid because he couldn't hit a baseball and he never did anything right and he was lazy or whatever, we wouldn't do anything about that. We wouldn't feel like, but yet those very words damage that kid's, they make his soul bloody. Yeah. And bruised, just like that physical punch does. And again, I'm not saying any way that I mean, and on behalf of that dad, the dad truly believes he's motivating the kid to do better. And I would even give him I would even say, yeah, you probably are, but you're motivating out of fear.
And that's fear that he's going to let you down, fear that he's not good enough. And so that's not what we want to do with our kids. We don't want to use anger to motivate through fear to get our kids to perform, obey, achieve anything. Anger is not a connective tool.
Well, and think about that same scenario and forget the physical part of it for a minute, but just say, instead of that dad saying, hey man, I believe in you. You can do this. I absolutely believe you can be an amazing hitter. Now, we're going to work on this. I mean, just say in similar, instead of, why don't you ever do this? Why do you keep making the same mistakes over and over again? Just speaking belief versus speaking, a negative identity.
Yeah.
Usually with anger comes a negative identity. Same thing like, what happens when everybody's trying to get ready and everybody's just moving in slow motion? They don't want to stop their video games. They don't want to stop whatever it is. Oh my goodness. That one can just really, I'm a person who values being on time. So that
Poor
is
Don.
and what I learned with 7 kids and a wife is that you're only as good as your slowest person. So you have to figure out who's the critical path is the person who's going to be the slowest, and you got to get them going because you got to get all of them out at the same time.
And so, I mean, just with that scene right there, yelling and screaming at the slowest person's maybe making them move a little bit faster, but it's just creating tension and stress for everybody else. And so that's not the way to do that. And so some practical things is to go in on knowing that your weakest link, your slowest person, what are you going to do to help them? I mean, and so but it goes back to, you're not getting your way. You're not getting in the car on time. You're not getting out the door when you want to. And so knowing that, okay, this is what I want, defining that, and then what's it going to take for me to get that? How am I going to get the cooperation of everybody to get that versus being angry on the back end when you don't get it?
Yeah. So, we could do all kinds of scenarios, but we think you've probably gotten the hint a little bit about what we wanted to do in this podcast is just alert you to the dangers of anger and how it's expensive as a relationship withdrawal. And then just start to talk through how to not do it and how to think differently about it. Here's just a few practical ways to exchange anger. Remember, we said encourage extravagantly and correct carefully. How do you exchange anger for careful correction? Again, correct your kids, please, but do it the Bible tells us to do it with great patience and careful instruction. One of them is we talk about this in our discipline course. If you want to go to Base Camp and go into our relational discipline course, we have 7 discipline drivers. And one of those discipline drivers is to respond instead of react.
Yeah, and if you think about that, if you're going to respond, then you can think, I'm going to be angry here. I'm going to choose to be angry here. Like I believe Jesus walked in with the tables and said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to prepare.
You're preparing your rope.
You're preparing. Exactly. He prepared for the anger. He said, this is the emotion that needs to be displayed right here, right now, and I'm going to use it. And so, but most of us, and for me, for sure, as a parent, I reacted. It's something that came up out of nowhere, and it blew everybody up in the midst of it all. And so one of the best ways to do that is to stop and take a deep breath. Think for a second, what's the best way for me to respond versus react? What's the best way for me to respond to this situation? And I guarantee you 9 times out of 10, it won't be anger at all. There might be one of those, if the kid's running in the street, you're going to react with anger, more so fear that the child's going to get hurt. But most situations are not that time critical damaging. And so respond and then take a deep breath and think for just a second, what's the best way for me to respond here? What's the best way? And just a little piece of that too is after you've taken a deep breath, if you've got a little kid, then I highly recommend that you get down on their level and look eye to eye to them and then use your sentence. So many times with anger, if you think about it, we're standing tall, lording over, coming at our kids, just spraying our anger bullets all over them. But if you think about it, if you stop, take a breath, get down on their level, look at them eye to eye because they are a little person. You're acknowledging and value them as a little person. And then you know what? The eyes are the window to the soul. So then you get to see into their little soul, and all of a sudden you're calm because now you're talking to their little soul. And what do you want? You want the best for their little soul. You want to connect with their little soul.
Yeah. I remember when I was a parent of 4 girls at that time, sometimes I got in the habit of asking Suzanne, hey, I'm really angry about this. What should I do? What would be your counsel? Because
And he said it just like that too, which I think is hysterical. He'd be like, I'm really angry. And I'd take a look at him like, really?
Yeah, because
Cool.
Because my
Self-control on that anger.
Yeah, my anger, usually when I get really angry, I actually get quiet. And then if I blow up, it's good. It's because it's just really gotten to me and it's gotten past but I would say and often she would say, here's the context of things. And, it would help me to go in and be able to say things in a more tactful way. And sometimes I would just file it away. Not going to do anything about that. And that's really a lot of times that, if you're angry, is just asking God, asking your wife, kind of the same thing, hopefully that they're hearing God's voice. But really it comes down to, God, how do you want me to respond in this situation? Give me guidance. And that it's really hard for us to think we're following God. Like you said, Suzanne says, anger tends to overcome us. And then that's where we got to, it's just like any addiction, any issue, we got to stop that first impulse. How do you stop an alcoholic? Well, they don't drink,
Right.
and then when they have the craving, they don't do it anymore. And they have accountability and things like that. And they talk to it about with people. It's much the same process, but really just asking God to say, God, what is it? And realize it takes time to turn from anger. So if you're an angry person right now and dealing with it, it's going to take some time for you to develop different habits.
Well, and not only time, but intentionality. I mean, I remember going to like an anger management seminar type thing that we did. And I remember one of the things they said is write down everything that makes you angry. That was huge for me to take an inventory because like I said, it would come out of nowhere. But once I had the list, then it was like, oh, this is one of those things that makes me angry. Like when I would hurt myself, stub my toe or whatever, I would flare up with anger. And now that I know that, it's like, oh, I'm angry because I hurt myself. And don't lash out at anybody. That's just what it is. And so we just encourage you to know that, like Don said, it's going to take time. Anger's not going to connect you to your kids. You do not want it in your home. You don't have the right as a parent to be angry with your little people. And then what's it going to take to uproot that anger that's in your lives? What's it going to take? Lay it before the Lord and say, okay, God, I'm angry. I'm mad about this. I'm frustrated that my kid won't won't go potty or won't go to bed at night or, won't do their homework.
That's what I was remembering when our kids would ask for one more thing when we were trying to put them to bed and they were trying to go to sleep. And I would finally just go, you're going to bed right now. You are going to bed. You're not going to ask me for one more thing, just that type of stuff. And so
many, yeah. I mean, so that is a nighttime ritual that I believe is the test of our parenting patience-ness. If you can be patient, because then you start thinking they're taking advantage of me. Yeah. They're manipulating me. You get that word, my kid's manipulating me, and then all of a sudden anger comes in because you're not getting what you want.
They are evil. Exactly. They are evil children.
We do not negotiate with terrorists. That's what I think.
Yeah. So, hey, what a way to end the podcast with evil children that are terrorists. Not really. They're not. They're actually blessings, and they are actually wonderful things. And that's another thing is, let's close with that, is that one way to not be angry is to see your children as just children of God, fearfully and wonderfully made. And, because we do, it's so we can think all those bad things, that they're manipulating us and they're bad and they're doing all this stuff. But in reality, God has made them exactly the way he wants, and they are just growing up and they are learning. And we are with them on the journey with Jesus.
And not only are they all those wonderful things you just said, but they actually are God's gift to you. Because think about it. Have you ever been as angry as you are with that little kid when you're putting him to bed? I mean, and so it's ironing, sharpening iron. He's going in and changing things and fixing things and drawing you closer to him. Because my goodness, we need Jesus more than any other time when our kids have pushed our buttons. And so they're your gift. Look at it as a gift to make you better.
So a longer podcast today than normal because a lot to cover with anger. Let's wrap it up with this. I'm wrapping it up for the third time, I think. But it's a serious issue. And we've had fun with it a little bit, but it really is serious. It is an expensive relationship withdrawal. It will drive your kids away over time. And the Bible says don't do it. The Bible says be very careful with your anger and refrain from it. and all those things. And so don't be provoked in your spirit, for anger resides in the lap of fools. Proverbs, Ecclesiastes 7:9 says. So let's work on not being angry and watch it, and replace it. Remember, we said encourage extravagantly and correct carefully. Come in with more encouragement. Be careful with your correction and be careful with your anger, and watch your home change. Hey, this is one way you always go be crazy. This is a crazy way to live life, but God's ways are crazy, and we always want you to do that. Go be crazy, parents. crazycoolfamily.com.